Hey guys, it's Jim Bales with Co-op Motorworks and Motorhome Rehab Ranch on Patreon, and I guess Eleganza's decided to lay down in our set here. It's okay. We're today going to talk about something that everybody has two of. Two fuel tanks. Okay. The two fuel tanks in our GMC are 25 gallons. They go from side to side, and they're made out of metal. Fuel today, ethanol, remember ethanol? It's alcohol and water. Alcohol rusts metal. Water rusts metal, and then the alcohol just cleans it up better than a whistle and throws it in all the filters. Perfect. And then one day you're sitting next to your coach, you look down there, and it's starting to drip. What's that? And you go underneath, and your tank has got a rusted hole in it. What are you going to do? Well, you can buy two new tanks, but you know that you're also going to have the same thing happen. Fuel's going to have ethanol in it. We're going to be grinding corn up for a long time, you know. So what are we going to do? We want our motorhomes to last, right? So Jason here is going to show you, this is our solution. This is a 50s, how many?
64 gallon.
Woo, 64 gallon single aluminum tank. Jason's going to tell us a little bit about it.
Hey everyone. All right, so this was a tank that we kind of designed because of a few issues that we're having. Obviously, the rust issue was the primary reason for originally going with aluminum. One of the primary reasons. Actually, fuel injection was one of the other big things that we wanted to go with a single fuel tank. With fuel injection, the fuel injection wants to return fuel back to the tank, unlike with the carburetors, and it doesn't really like sending it to two different tanks.
It doesn't understand two tanks. It wants to pull out of and put back in the same cavity. So if you're going to keep two tanks, then you're going to fuel injection. Fuel injection has a return. So you have to get kind of complicated on the solenoids. A single tank alleviates that.
Yeah, so we kind of had a few different designs on this thing over the years. This is our most latest, greatest design.
8th iteration.
Yeah, it's been a little bit coming. Some of the things that we ended up doing on this tank that was different than like our first iterations of it is, so on the original setup, what we were doing is we were cutting partway through a cross member that sits between the two fuel tanks. And a lot of people were a little hesitant about that. They liked the idea of a single aluminum fuel tank. They understood the reason that we needed to go with a single aluminum fuel tank, or a single fuel tank at least, because of the fuel injection, which was a lot of times the reason they were going there. Or they just had rusted out tanks and they're just didn't want to put steel tanks back in. So what we ended up doing is, with this generation, is we actually chop out the cross member completely, but this is completely structural through that area. This bolts on two different planes to the original cross member. So you get all of that torsional rigidity and stuff that you wouldn't have when you normally chop out something like that that's structural.
Now originally we put a one by
one by
on the bottom to add that
angle
strength back, but this does it in two planes, and it does it right through the middle. Part of the baffle system is actually an aluminum beam.
Yeah, there's a 1/4 inch plate of aluminum right through the center, welded on top and bottom, and obviously sides, that is going to keep this thing from flexing and doing all that. This generation also got rid of some other issues we had with mounting it. This has all the mounting hardware basically right there. These plates, you don't have any spots where the frame is actually going to rub up against the actual fuel tank itself. Obviously, aluminum softer than steel. You really don't want to have aluminum rubbing on steel, because eventually the steel is going to win and you end up with a leak. So with this generation, that solved that issue. Another couple things that we did is This tank doesn't have any sumps down below that hang down lower. There's times that we did a little bit of sumps. We were trying to pull from like the lowest part. But what we ended up going with is a straw system, which is just like what a normal car would have. Is you've got the sending unit typically has a straw that goes down in and picks up fuel, because if you take like a big thing of water and you tilt it back and forth, the sides are gonna have air when you take a corner. It's gonna slosh away from it, but the center is always gonna be submerged, no matter what direction you go. The back end of these runs lower typically driving down the highway, so it does have the pickup a little bit towards the rear. That's gonna pick up the most amount of fuel that you can possibly get out of these. We have ventilation tubes here in the center. So this rear one, this is the main fuel pickup. The front one here, that's going to be your generator pickup. We kept them all 3/8, so these just, you can put the hose right on it with clamps, no problem there.
And one of the reasons for this, once you put this tank up, you don't have to take it back down to change the hoses, because we know rubber hoses go out, right? We know that you can change these, change all the hoses with it in place. That's a huge improvement over, the rubber hoses get on top of the tank and get crushed and all that kind of happy stuff. No problem here. Another thing that was on here, I know he's getting ready to cover it.
Yeah.
The big problem with our original tanks had a single 5/16 vent line for two 25-gallon tanks that runs all the way up front under the passenger front seat. Bottom line is the tanks were not vented well enough. Okay, show them where those vents are. We have two.
Yeah, so we got two of them right here, both 3/8. And then there's also the fill vent there that's 1/2 inch.
That's right. And also the fill is not on the lower part of the tank like our original tank is. When you're putting fuel in, when the fuel gets to 1/4 of a tank, it has to push the fuel out of the way to get in the tank. That causes the pressure zone. The neck is up higher, so the fuel will go in better. And the 1/2 inch return here is up to even a little bit higher. So you'll be able to really blow fuel into this thing because of the way it's designed.
Yep. Another thing we're going with, we have the port right here. If you're going with fuel injection, that is going to get a barb fitting for your fuel return. So that's where it's going to return to. If you're doing carbureted with this tank, you can just put a plug in there and no problem, but you can always swap to it later. We've been putting in these filters. So if you buy one of these from us, you're going to end up with a serviceable fill filter. This one right here, I mean, you can see it's glass, and then you've got an element in there that's not the paper that just gets like sucked apart if you're running like higher pressure pumps.
Right.
And I'm sure the ethanol probably destroys the paper and stuff. I don't know. All I know is when we had the old paper ones that was clear, they would just disintegrate inside. These, if you get stranded on the side of the road because your fuel, filter got clogged, you got some bad gas from the pump,
Georgia.
You can pull this apart with very, very basic tools, and clean it out, get the debris out, and you're back running short term.
We put that on the generator and on the motor.
Yeah, so both. So we run one that has just the 3/8 set up for the main feed for the engine, and then for the generator one, we have one that has adapters, so you can run the 3/8 coming from the tank, but then it necks down to the 1/4 inch, or if you have a 5/16 because you put some aftermarket in. So that's the fuel filters. We've got a brand new sending unit. Sending units, Jim will probably tell you about that. I'm sure he's seen our other video.
This does not cost $360 or
exactly.
Like
so if your sending unit ever goes out on this thing, you're talking $100 maybe, and so it's a lot cheaper, a lot less expensive. I'm not going to say cheap because this is still a good sending unit. It just doesn't have as much complicated stuff going on.
One of the things about these sending units, this tank is 5 inches, right? The original fuel tank is 4.5 inches deep. That sender, I mean, and you've seen it, you take off, right, and you lose gas. You're watching the gauge, oh my God. So then you say, well, let me hit the brakes, and then you're going to make some gas. You feel better, right? The sender's really not telling you very much. Let me tell you how you drive this thing. No matter if you have this tank or you have your original tanks, you fill it up, you drive 250 miles, stop, go pee, hey, touch your hubs. Front 2 will be the warmest, the middle 2 will be the next warm, the back 2 will be the coolest, but they'll all be the same. And if that's so, if your bearings or brakes have any issues, they'll spike the temperature long before it fails, okay? So forget the gas gauge, just got one, okay? I put a piece of tape over mine. I just drive 250 miles and stop. That was hard for me to learn because my dad was a Greyhound bus driver. We made damn good time to the 7-Eleven, you know? But you're driving a 65-year-old relic. You need to take some time. You need to smell roses. You need to go 60, 65. And whether you have an aluminum tank that holds fuel or you have 2 steel tanks that still hold fuel, it's important to have clean, reliable fuel delivery to your motor. It's just, you know, you don't think about it. It's out of sight, out of mind. It's underneath that motorhome. But there's what, 56 feet of vent hose alone under there. I mean,
yep.
You know, there's just piles of hoses under there. And your fuel delivery system is a very, very important system. All right? If we're going to take GMC into the next generation of you guys, you're going to have to deal with this fuel tank because they don't make metal fuel tanks anymore. And you're going to need to do something. I'd love to have a plastic fuel tank, but you know, barring 6 figures for the tooling. That's not going to happen. So look, aluminum fuel tank, I know people talk back and forth. This is a big subject, kind of like oil and gas, you know. But we have to do something for our coaches to keep them on the road. And if you can't keep fuel in your motorhome, party's over. All right? So look, thanks for the time. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for being a ranch hand. And we'll do another video. Tell us what you'd like to hear about. Give us comments on this. We'd love to hear it. See you next time.
See you guys.